Hi, everybody, and welcome. We have such a fun time ahead because we're going to take a deep dive into omega-3s. I'm Pam Smith. It's a delight to welcome you, and I am being joined by Elana Natker, who is going to be our go-to source today for how to come to understand the ABCs of omega-3s, the truth, the myths. How do you kind of take it all just down to what science is and what do we know? What are we getting ready to know? I was really thrilled about a month ago to have an opportunity to announce that Quarry Arctic salmon had received the Heart Check certification from the American Heart Association, in large part because of the omega-3 content and the fatty acid profile. We did omega-3s part 1, how to be able to promote and protect and propel your wellness with omega-3s. And we wanted today to, again, take a deep dive, take a little bit of a harder look at what the science is, what's the difference in omega-3s and the types. And again, I had an opportunity to hear Elana speak and give a webinar on this very subject. And I said, okay, we got to do part 2. So again, welcome, Elana. Love you being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Pam.
And I will go ahead and share with those of you that are watching that this is very late because Elana and her family are living in Oman. So 10 hours ahead from now is, so we're talking about only 8. Oh, well then. You've got all night. It's no problem at all. Well, we won't keep you too long, but again, just so thrilled you've joined us. It's hard to believe looking at you that your resume and bio tell me that you've been in this world of communicating positive health and wellness messages for over 2 decades, which tells me you must have started when you were 12. But in the process of that, really, again, not only got your master's in nutrition and again, registered dietitian, but you really have forged a path and have become nationally, globally recognized for your ability to take hard science and hard concepts of science and be able to break it down into understandable sound bites, things that we can really go, oh, that's what that means. So when it comes to omega-3s, I can't think of anything more important. Your business is Sage Consulting, and you again travel the globe to be able to help people come to these very same discoveries. So again, we're just thrilled that you're with us. So obviously, Quarry Arctic salmon is very excited about omega-3s because we have in just a 3.5 ounce serving of salmon more than twice the omega-3s that are recommended. That's awesome. But what I would really love to hear from you and what our listeners and viewers would like to hear is, why does it matter? What's important about omega-3? So with that, why does it matter?
It's a very good question, Pam, and I'm thrilled to get started in that. I mean, the thing about omega-3 is I think that most consumers and even some healthcare practitioners don't quite understand is that it's not just a single nutrient. There's 3 main types of omega-3s. There's ALA omega-3, that's alpha linolenic acid, that you mostly get from plant sources. There's EPA and DHA, eicosapentaenoic acid and docosahexaenoic acid. That's why we say EPA and DHA. And those are the kinds.
Very well, though. Let me just say,
I've been practicing. But so those are the kind that you typically find, what we say, in marine sources. So in fish, you can also get it in the algae, the microalgae that the fish then eat, and so that's how the fish get the omega-3s. So EPA and DHA are the nutrients that are of most important in terms of health, heart health, brain health, eye health, and in prenatal health. Those are the main areas of focus that they're important for. So,
and the ones that have been most researched, because most of the vast body of research, I think I've heard you say that over 40,000 pieces of research about omega-3s, the vast majority of that is about what we would call long chain omega-3s, the EPA and the DHA.
Right. There's 40,000 research studies on EPA and DHA specifically. Of those, 4,000 are human clinical trials. So those are the ones that when we talk about nutrition applicability, so being able to take the science and apply it to everyday recommendations in health, those are the studies that we really want to look at to help you make certain claims. So we have over 4,000 of those studies that we can pull from on EPA and DHA, a well-studied nutrient.
Yeah, for sure. You hear the term essential nutrients. Is omega-3 essential? Is it something that we have to consume to be able to get its benefits?
So I will answer this in the layman's terms, which is, of course, it's essential. We need it. We need it in our bodies. But the regulatory, the official term for essential, there's actually a definition for something to be essential. And to be essential, it means that the body itself can't produce it on its own. So, our body, through metabolism and through enzymatic functions and all of that, we are able to take nutrients and fit them to what our body needs. So EPA and DHA omega-3s can be manufactured in the body based on the foods that you eat. So you can get it from ALA, the plant-based omega-3s, but the process is not very efficient. So let me take one quick step back. ALAs, the plant-based omega-3s, those are considered essential because the body cannot make ALA omega-3s. EPA and DHA, the body can make them, but what happens is the ALA has to be elongated because, as you said, the ALA is a shorter omega-3, so it has to be elongated, and then more unsaturation needs to happen. And so for those processes to happen, it's very slow. It's only like 5 to 10% of the time it gets from ALA to EPA and DHA. So for practical purposes, as dietitians, as nutrition educators, we say you've got to just get your EPA and DHA from the diet. I mean, you cannot depend on plant-based sources for the necessary nutrients of EPA and DHA.
Because, as you said, that conversion factor, if you will, is very inconsistent. I understand that females seem to be a little more efficient in the conversion than males, but there's no absolutes in it. As you said, 5 to 10%, but that can go up or down the scale. So again, it's certainly not something we would want to depend on when we have 4,000 human studies that tell us how critical EPA and DHA are.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Now, even within the ALA and the EPA and the DHA, again, not only does the response in the body differ, but again, where those come from differ. So you mentioned EPA, DHA are marine sources, whereas the ALA, the short chain, tends to come mostly from plant sources. What are the plant sources? Are there those that are just really rich in the ALA?
Right. When most people talk about plant-based omega-3s, they're thinking about flax seeds or chia or walnuts. Some other, these seeds and nuts can be, and of those specific ones that are better sources of the ALA omega-3s. And I should mention, ALA omega-3s are still beneficial. They're all what we call unsaturated fats. So we have saturated fats that tend to be artery clogging, and we have unsaturated fats. So our omega-3s are just highly unsaturated, and they have all these other benefits. So it's not that I want to say, don't worry about your ALAs because they're not important. Well, they are. They have some importance in the body, but we, as Americans, we actually get enough ALAs because, as I said, when we talk about are they essential nutrients, there's a specific amount, specific recommendations that the U.S. government says that we should be getting, and we are getting that. What we're not getting is enough EPA and DHA. So we've got to make sure that we get those from the body.
And we
get those from the diet.
From the diet. I think that we get lured easily, and maybe this is one of those myths about omega-3s, is we pick up a milk carton and it says contains, 100 milligrams of EPA of omega-3s, or we buy eggs that say they're a significant source of omega-3s, but all of those omega-3s that come in those foods are, again, the ALA, the short chain, because it's the diet that's been fed to the chickens or the diet that's been fed to the cows to produce the milk that is what produces the omega-3s in it. It's not the marine sources.
It sometimes can be. So there are some food sources that are fortified or have added nutrients to them, and they tend to be DHA, at least from what I've seen. But yeah, so I know you can get DHA milk. And some of the diets for hens, they have some DHA or EPA and DHA, but it's when we're talking about fortified foods or functional foods that do more than what the typical product would do, we're talking about very small amounts. So, we want to hit our DHA and EPA levels to a certain amount. And with anything that's fortified, you don't want your milk to be your only source of omega-3s, let's say. It's just supposed to kind of get you over the edge, give you just a little bit more. So there's maybe like 100 grams or so per serving when we're looking for, up to like 500 grams per serving roughly.
Right. So different. And that's where the marine sources really come in. And it's not all fish nor all seafood that contains, you had mentioned the microalgae. That's what the feeder fish that then in turns the bigger fish that we consume those feeder fish. It's kind of like the classic chain. We're talking long chain. There is indeed a feed chain that makes that essential difference. What are the marine sources that are the highest in the long chain omega-3 fatty acids?
Yeah, so when we talk to consumers about getting your omega-3s from fish, we tend to talk about the oily fish, the fatty fish, because these omega-3s are stored in the fats of fish, in the fatty deposits. So salmon is a good source, an excellent source of omega-3s. Mackerel, sardines, herring, all very, very oily, very good sources of omega-3s in our seafood diet. I know the Seafood Nutrition Partnership, who you had Valerie on your last Facebook Live, and they have a fantastic resource. If you go to seafoodnutrition.org, where you can download a chart, and it gives you omega-3 levels of most common fish. So, there's even some shellfish that are good sources of omega-3s. Mussels, for example, are a good source.
Shellfish as compared the more mollusk type as compared to crustaceous.
Exactly. So, a lot of people eat shrimp, a lot of people eat tilapia, but those are not good sources of omega-3s. So, I mean, good fish protein, but not what we're looking for when we're trying to boost omega-3s in our diet.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because the truth is all fish and seafood are excellent sources of so many nutrients. I mean, excellent sources of proteins, and specifically tyrosine, that is, fuel for the brain. So when we heard forevermore that fish food is brain food, in large part, it was then focused on the amino acids that were in it. It's only been in, maybe the last couple of decades that we've come to know that there's more to it, that DHA, EPA plays a part. So even though all fish is a great source of protein, there's some fish, particularly those cold water fishes, they have to store up that omega-3 in their fat deposits to weather the cold, if you will. The mollusk, again, mussels, clams, oysters, even scallops, right, contain some of those omega-3s, which are really great. Is that one of the questions you're asked a lot? Is it, the oily fish? Because I know that there was a large part of life that people were trying to avoid fat at all costs. So they would choose a lean fish, a white fish, over a fatty fish, thinking that lower fat is better. But all fats are not created equal.
That's exactly right. I know. I feel like fatty fish needs a PR makeover or
Yes.
something. Like it just needs some better marketing because it doesn't sound very appetizing, but it's true. I mean, that is really where most of your nutrients are, is in these fatty, really substantial, nutrient-rich fish.
Yeah. And one of the reasons that the US Senate dietary guidelines actually upped the percentage of fat that is recommended in our diet to be able to embrace some of these healthier kinds of oils like omega-3s and monounsaturated fats that would be in olive oil. And we see population groups around the world that are consuming them that are not only living well, but they're aging well.
Right. Right. Yeah, that is absolutely true.
So the American Heart Association, back to that oily fish, recommends that we consume about 2 servings a week, considering a serving to be that 3.5 ounce, to give us our recommended amount of EPA and DHA. But if you really try to dig deep, it's hard to be able to find specific recommendations of what our intake of EPA and DHA should be. Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, so there's when it comes to recommendations, like you said, all of the recommendations for EPA and DHA are based on seafood, eating seafood. So, like you mentioned, the American Heart Association, they talk about 2 3.5 ounce servings of fish a week. If you look at the dietary guidelines for Americans, it's similar but slightly different for some reason, where they talk about 8 ounces of seafood per week spread out into 2 portions. So 4 ounces of serving, 4 ounces of fish, preferably fatty fish. And they lay it out saying by doing that, by having your 8 ounces of seafood per week, that should give you a daily average of 250 milligrams of EPA and DHA per day, at daily average. And that should to be cardioprotective.
Mhm.
So that is their recommendation, at least written in the guidelines. But there's research that's been going on that actually just came out, that looked at more omega-3s might even be better. The more omega-3s that you get, the more EPA and DHA, the more cardioprotective it may be. It reduces risk for heart attack and for other cardiac events.
Mhm.
So we need to kind of take another look at what the guidelines are saying at the very least. And the other thing too, I'm sure you were going to bring this up, but Americans just aren't getting that amount of fish. They're just not. I mean, most people, we say 8 ounces of fish per week, they're getting closer to 3.5 ounces.
If
per
that,
week,
yeah.
on average, right? Exactly.
Mhm.
So to even think that, gosh, I need even more than that, maybe double the amount, it's just, it's going to be a hard sell for most Americans.
Yeah. Well, in our part 1 of our omega-3 series, we talked about some of the barriers and some of the obstacles to people getting that fish in that they need. Some of it is just not growing up with it. It wasn't part of their culture, not knowing how to cook it, not sure how to source it. Lots and lots. It smells up the house. I mean, all kinds of different things. And again, as registered dietitians and nutrition educators, we spend a lot of time helping people to break down those barriers.
Yep.
And one of the things that I think has made salmon the darling, if you will, of even meat eaters is that it's so approachable. We find that with Kore Arctic is that it is the meat eaters loved salmon because it just has a texture and a richness. But again, it's being able to kind of change that mindset of Americans to be able to even meet that 1 or 2 servings. But if we try to go beyond that, that seems almost unsurmountable. And that's where oftentimes we're asked the question, well, should I be looking beyond fish? Should I be looking at supplements? And kind of what's the skinny on that?
Yeah, I do recommend supplements as well, because I think that no matter what, I mean, we can't follow a perfect diet, as even dietitians. We're doing our best. And I do eat fish twice a week, but as I said, that's giving me maybe 250 milligrams of EPA and DHA per day. My personal goal is to raise my level up, even higher. And you can look at, you can get your omega-3 levels blood levels tested, and mine are good, but I want to raise them up. So I'm trying to get like 500 milligrams, maybe even a gram per day. So I do take a supplement to literally to supplement my diet, because there's so much science that shows that's good not only for your heart but also for your brain, for your eyes, and back when I was pregnant with my children years ago, it's good for prenatal health as well, and for young childhood development.
Absolutely. So if we were, let's say we're eating, because the truth is most people when they have fish have a larger portion than 3.5 ounces. They tend to have more like a 5 to 6 ounce piece of fish, whether that is what's recommended or not as a protein intake. That's what people tend to do. With beef, it could be a 10 to 12 ounce piece, but let's say people are having a 6 ounce piece. They're getting probably a little bit more. They're pushing up towards that 500 milligrams. But again, it would have to take a little bit of thinking through, how do I get salmon in not just twice a week, but 3 times a week? How do I get it in 4 times a week? And I know that oftentimes when I'm counseling patients, I tend to say almost think of omega-3s the way you do thinking of calcium. At the end of the day, you can think through, what did you consume that day in terms of dairy products or dried beans or any of the greens that are high in calcium, and you take a calcium supplement when you need to make up that healthy difference. Would you apply that same logic with omega-3 supplementation?
I would. And part of, we're talking, as I said, we're talking about trying to get ourselves to the levels of 250 to 500 milligrams per day. I should say, we do have some data on what Americans are getting for their EPA and DHA from food and supplements, and it is closer to about 100 milligrams per day. So it's quite low.
Quite low.
Yeah. So, and when it comes to an upper limit of how much omega-3s you should have, there's actually, according to the FDA, you can have up to 5 grams per day, and that's only, for certain health conditions. You certainly are recommended to go even higher.
High triglyceride, certain kinds of, almost as a therapeutic dose as compared to cardio preventive.
But there's honestly, there's no safety risk involved in going even higher. Again, there's no need to go necessarily that high if you're overall having an overall healthy diet and you're generally healthy in many other ways. But like I said, that's kind of why here I'm relatively healthy. My omega-3 levels are good. I want to get them even better, so I shoot for a gram. But I think for the average person, 500 milligrams per day is a good benchmark to aim for. And like I said, we're not even close.
What do you look for in a supplement if you were to either for yourself shopping for one or recommend to clients? You're looking not just for an omega-3 fish oil supplement, but back to the essentials. You're looking for what is the proportion and the actual milligrams of omega-3s in the form of EPA and DHA.
Exactly. So the best way to do that, and most people, when they talk about supplements, they talk about fish oil. They tend to use that term interchangeably when it comes to EPA and DHA. But there's actually more than just fish oil. You can get your EPA and DHA from krill, which is a type of crustacean from the Antarctic waters, and it's like this little red pill. You can get it from algae. There's vegetarian, vegan EPA and DHA that you can get. So there's a variety of types. And I should have disclosed in the beginning, one of the organizations that I work with is GOED, which is the Global Organization for EPA and DHA omega-3s. And they are a member organization that has people all along the supply chain of EPA and DHA, including supplement products, including supplement companies. So any GOED member will sign an affidavit of a voluntary monograph that shows that they adhere to certain quality standards and safety standards. And so I would recommend any
Mhm.
company that is a GoEd member, any supplement that's, and you can find this, it's actually on their website and on the consumer website, which is alwaysomega3s.com, to find out which ones it is. So when you look at those different supplements, whatever it is on the front of the package, I actually ignore that number. I flip it to the not nutrition facts, it's the supplement facts label, and look to see if the EPA and the DHA amount, sometimes you have to add them together, you got to do a little bit of math, but you add them together and make sure that that number is at least 250, if not 300, I mean, if not 500 milligrams. So EPA and DHA added together.
Okay, to make, again, that healthy difference. I loved you mentioning the algae, because obviously the Korea Arctic, what makes its feed so special is that microalgae that becomes part of the feed model, which allows such a low fish in to fish out ratio, less than 0.5 to 1, which is just stunning in nature. It's more than just that fish in, fish out, though. It's what it's doing for bringing the omega-3, first of all, to the fish, because as healthy as omega-3s are for us, they're essential for the fish too. It's what makes them strong and healthy, and in turn make us strong and healthy.
Exactly. Very good. Yep.
Love that. I know it's a fun little circle of life in so many ways. I love that. So is there anything we've not touched on, Elana? Anything that you want to just leave all of our viewers with to just make sure we do? What I'm hearing is that, yeah, we get enough of the short chain ALAs more than likely in our diet, but we're not, absolutely not getting enough EPA and DHA. We do need those oily fishes, and we need a new name for them, but we need to be taking them in at least twice a week in the right proportion, and more if we can. And if we can't get our needs met there, we look towards supplements to be able to make, again, that healthy difference.
I would. And we also, you did mention too, some of these functional foods, fortified foods. I would look at those as well, just as a way to kind of give you a little nudge. So if you get that DHA fortified milk, or infant formula always has, or almost always has DHA added to it, but we're not really talking about infant health. But so I would consider those as well. And then I probably, would be remiss to mention there's certain fish you don't want to eat because of the, considered high mercury content. So the higher end of the food chain fish, like shark and king mackerel and things like that, they may be good sources of omega-3s, but highly recommend avoiding them or having them in limited quantity because of the chance of mercury, especially if you're pregnant, or breastfeeding.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned we're not talking about prenatal or child health, but we just might want to try to get back together right before back to school, assuming that happens, to talk about, again, brain power for our kids and ourselves to really be able to do that. There's so much coming out about omega-3s with mood and being able to even become in some ways a treatment for some different kinds of neuro disorders. So would love to talk about some of that too. But today you've given us our deep dive into omega-3s, and that's what we needed to hear. The truth, the myths, do we say the lies? Love it all, and love that you joined us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
So you gave two websites we could go to. One is the Seafood Nutrition Institute.
Seafoodnutrition.org. Yep.
And then you also gave GoEds, but you said it's omega3s.com?
So alwaysomega3s.com. That's the one. It's got a lot of consumer friendly information. So really for your Facebook audience, I think it would be good.
That's awesome. Thank you. Get some sleep, my friend. Appreciate it. Okay. Bye-bye. See you soon.
Bye-bye.